welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing my July wrap up. I got through 10 books, some of them were audiobooks, some of them I read the physical book, so I think this might be a long one, so it might be best if we just get straight on into it. So the first one I finished was an audiobook, and that was The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. I feel like I listened to this ages ago. When I went through my Goodreads and it turned out I finished it in July, I was a bit shocked. I've had this on my TBR for what seems like years, but I finally picked it up when I think it was in my Amazon book haul, I'm not too sure. But I decided to pick up the audiobook and I'm glad I did. I feel like if I had read the book I would have done after this, because it is all about character and character building, and I'm not very good with those kind of books. I like a bit of action, a bit of something to move the plot along, and nothing really much happens after the first few chapters that really got me interested in. But if you don't know, this follows a young girl called Salmon who is really horrifically murdered, and it follows her up in heaven watching her family and friends deal with their grief and basically get on with their lives. I think the main problem with this book, and probably why I didn't really enjoy it, was because I didn't feel any connection to any of the characters apart from Salmon herself. All the other characters I didn't really care for. Well, actually I did care about Salmon's sister. She's like literally the only one. And I'm a bit angry at how they never caught the killer. Those are the kind of books that always really annoy me. If the killer's not caught, then it's a very good chance that I'm not going to like the book. But I'm glad that I gave it a go. People say it is a classic, very modern classic, so I'm glad I gave it a go, but I wouldn't really recommend it to anybody who doesn't get along with character driven books. Then I went straight on to another audiobook which I finished in about 2 days. That's Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I wanted this book as soon as it was published, but I never got around to buying the hardback because it was like £20, and sometimes I don't really like spending that much on a book. But when I saw this in my Amazon book haul, which I will link below, and it was all like £2, I thought I need to get this. I went for the audiobook just because Neil Gaiman himself narrated the audiobook, which I thought would be great, and I really enjoyed it. It's great having an audiobook that is narrated by the actual author, because you know they know what they're on about. This is basically a selection of some of Neil Gaiman's favourite Norse mythology stories. So you've got like Thor and Loki and Odin, and it's all really interesting. I like seeing how the Norse version of Loki and Thor are completely different to what Marvel tells you that they are. So don't go ahead and think Marvel's Thor and Loki and Odin are all exactly like they were in Norse mythology, because they're really not. Thor was kind of more thick, Loki wasn't evil, he was just like a metaphor for chaos, and it's all very good. If you do like your mythology, I would definitely give this a go, because I loved how it's like Neil Gaiman basically being like a bard sat around a fire and just telling you these stories. And I think after reading this, I think I prefer Norse mythology to Greek mythology. I've just got so much in this that I just really enjoyed it, and it has got me more interested in learning more about the Norse gods. And while I was listening to those audiobooks, I read State of Sorrow by Melinda Salisbury. So this is one of my fairy loot books that I needed to get rid of, and one of the few YA books I had left on my bookshelf. So I decided to pick it up, give it a go, and it was okay. This follows a young girl called Sorrow who's brought up in a town where everyone has to be grieving, because on the day that she was born, her brother died and her mother died. So now her father is literally in grief and he doesn't want anybody to be happy. You cannot be happy at all. Even getting married, you can't be happy. It has to be a necessity, giving birth as well. And she's brought up in this place where she's basically running the place, because her father's in so much grief. He's taking this drug that makes the grief worse, and it's just not very good, until one day her brother shows up and it's like, is it really him? What's going on? I won't say anymore because I don't want to spoil it, but parts of it were a bit predictable. I did like Sorrow, and I liked all the differences between her country and the other places where there's colour, there's fashion, there's music. So all that's been banned where Sorrow lives because of this grief. So I liked seeing Sorrow go into these different countries where she can taste food, because food is all bland where she comes from, where she can start getting more fashionable and stuff like that. So it was quite good, but I'm not going to carry on with the series because it did end up being a bit predictable. Then I read Beyond the Darkened Shore by Jessica Leake. This is my last bit of YA on my shelf, which I am so happy about. And I went into this hoping it'd be good because it looks like a nice dark story. I didn't realise that this has a lot of Norse mythology in it, which was great, especially after listening to the Norse Mythology audiobook. So that was a great coincidence. but this follows Sierra, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled Kira, but in the back it says it's pronounced Sierra, who is a daughter of a Celt Lord, and she needs to protect her little town from the Northmen coming to raid it, who are basically Vikings, until a crow comes to her and says she will have to have an ally in the Northmen to stop these giants coming in and wrecking her village. It's all very good. You see them kind of connecting. There's a lot of Norse mythology because these giants are is it Jotun? I don't know what they're called, but I can see the word but I can't pronounce it. So you've got a lot of that. They mention all the gods and they're trying to teach them, and it's also got the Celt mythology as well, which I thought was really, really interesting. I'm not going to carry on with the series. Actually, I don't think this is a series. I think this might actually be a one-off. I'm not 100% sure, but it was really great. She goes to Valhalla. Oh my god, I loved it, and I definitely recommend this. To say this is my last YA book on my shelf, it's probably one of the best YAs I've read this year probably. So yeah, I actually did really like this. And like I do every month, I read the next book in the Plantagenet and Tudor novels by Philippa Gregory, and that was The King's Curse. This is the 7th book in the series, I believe, and it was really, really good. It follows Margaret Pole, who is one of the last Plantagenet heirs, and she is basically the main maid to the Queen, Catherine of Aragon, and she lives her life through at least the first 3 queens of Henry VIII. You've got Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and then was it Jane Seymour? I can't remember. So you've got those 3 queens in this, and it basically follows her trying to live her life knowing that the king is probably out to get her. You see Henry VIII going from this really nice young boy to this awful man who just wants what he wants, and it's just all very, very interesting. I didn't expect it to be that good. Margaret Pole is such an interesting character. It makes me want to learn more about her, and I don't want to say the ending just in case you don't know about her, but if you're looking at something that spans through the majority of Henry VIII's reign, I would definitely suggest this. This was amazing. Then, while I was reading The King's Curse, I listened to The King's Witch by Tracy Borman. I decided to do this as an audiobook just because I wasn't sure whether I would like it or not, and I ended up loving it. This follows Frances Gorges, who was a favourite in Queen Elizabeth's reign, but now that King James I has come to reign in England, she's not very liked. She's known for being very good with herbs, so he obviously accuses her of being a witch. But then when his daughter becomes ill, she gets released and basically becomes his daughter's maid. Then she somehow gets involved in the gunpowder plot, and that's where it got really, really interesting, because I did not know this would go down the avenue, and it's something that has always interested me, you know, the gunpowder plot with Guy Fawkes. If I was more knowledgeable on the whole gunpowder plot, I would have recognised a lot more names, but as soon as she started going into that, I was like, this is great, I want to know more about gunpowder plot. This is going to be a trilogy, so I'm not sure how this is going to go, but it was really, really good. There's political intrigue, you get to know more about King James I and how he was very paranoid and how his wife doesn't like him at all. But this was really, really, really interesting. And I'm sorry if I start moving around, but I've got pins and needles in my foot. I really need to sort out where I sit in these videos, because I always end up getting pins and needles in my feet. Maybe I might have to get a beanbag, so next time it might be a bit higher up if you see me. But after I read that, I read one of the books that I had to get read this month. It was from my book box Chronicle, and it's The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. When I read the blurb of this book, it sounded amazing. It's about a guy who wakes up one day and he's not in his own body, and a woman gets murdered. But it turns out he has 8 days to fix this murder, and he's going to relive that day over and over again for 8 days. But each day he'll wake up as a different person, so he basically relives the day in 8 different bodies, and he's got those 8 days to work out who killed this girl, and then he will be set free from this loop. And oh my god, this was so good. This is probably going to go down as one of my favourite books of the year. But the thing is, I can't really go into this because there's so much I can say, but majority of it will be spoilers. This is a book you kind of have to go in blind, and you will really enjoy it. The characters are amazing. The 8 different men this guy wakes up as all have very different personalities. Some of them you like, some of them you don't, some of them are not very nice people. Other ones are really, really nice people and you just love them and you don't want him to get rid of that body. But it's so good, and the ending, I did not expect it at all. Some people might guess, but I just didn't, and it was just so good. He created this really cool world as though this is a game. You've got a guy in a plague mask who's basically instructing him what to do and trying to help him. This is so hard to explain how good it is, but it was amazing. You can probably see by my smile that I actually really liked it. Can't wait for Stuart Turton to have more books out, because this was his debut novel and it's probably one of the best debut novels I have ever read. You need to read this if you like your fantasy, if you like your crime, if you like your kind of trippy kind of things, because it goes back and forth. It is so good. You need to read this. I was going to do a review until I realised the majority of it was spoilers, and this is a book that I do not want to spoil for anyone. You need to go read this. If there's any book that I recommend, this. It does look like quite big, but I got through it really fast. I was reading like 100 pages at a time. It is amazing. Now I'm going to shut up. Then I thought I would read a graphic novel, and I read Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This has been a book that's been on my TBR for ages. I finally got the book a few months ago, and I finally decided to read it, and I loved it. It's so cute, it's so adorable. Surprisingly, it's very emotional, and I did get quite upset. This is about a young girl called Nimona, who is a shifter, and she basically inserts herself as Lord Blackheart's sidekick, because Lord Blackheart is the evil person in this world. He's the villain, super villain. What I love about this is that you kind of think, is Lord Blackheart the villain? Because they're up against the institution of law enforcement, and you can kind of thinking, is he the villain or is it this institution? And it really makes you think, which I did not expect. And also I just love all the little drawings. One thing I love about graphic novels is the art. It's just so good. It's a book that makes you think, and if anybody says that a graphic novel is not a book, fight me. I will give them this and I will say, this makes you think just like any other book. Read it, and I want you to tell me your opinion on it. And I also just want a quick side note. The relationship between Lord Blackheart and Nimona is amazing. I love them. I want to know more. The ending shook me, and I just want to see them back together and go on little adventures. Just being amazing, because they are so good. The last audiobook I got through was The Mermaid by Christina Henry. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Christina Henry's 3 other books. She did a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, which went across 2 books, and then she did a retelling of Peter Pan, which is one of my favourite books. This is The Mermaid, and everyone thought this would be a retelling of The Little Mermaid, because if you look at this you would think it would be. It's a retelling of P.T. Barnum's Fiji Mermaid hoax, which I did not know anything about because I don't know much about him. I think like the rest of the world, people really got interested in him after The Greatest Showman, and now this book has come out, and I love seeing a different side to him, because Greatest Showman, he was seen as like a lifesaver, whereas in this he's seen as more of a slave driver. He kind of catches people and doesn't let them out of their contract. And with this you see Amelia, who is a mermaid, who gets caught in a fisherman's net, and she ends up falling in love with him. They have a happy life together, and then when this fisherman dies, she has the chance to go to New York and help Barnum in his museum. And she takes that choice because she wants to have some money to go visit the world, and it basically flows from there. It is quite a good book, but it's not as good as her other books. She tends to write really dark fairy tale retellings, and it sometimes has a bit of gore. It's a bit shocking sometimes. This didn't have any of that, and I think that's why I only gave it 3 stars compared to all her other books, which I probably gave 5 stars to. So I hope her next book goes along more of the fairy tale, making it gory kind of thing, rather than this. Because it was good, don't get me wrong, it was good. It just wasn't up to her usual standards. The last book I started reading just a few days ago. I didn't expect to get it read before the end of July, and that's The Stars Are Fire by Anita Shreve. This is one that I got in my Bookfulness unboxing a few months ago. I was kind of popping it off because it doesn't look like the kind of historic fiction I would read. I don't normally go for people on the covers, and it seemed a bit girly, but I ended up reading it and it was quite good. It follows the 1947 fires along the coast of Maine, and it shows this young woman called Grace with her children. She takes her children out to the sea and basically helps them survive, and it basically follows what happens after that. Her husband's gone missing, she ends up getting herself a job she's never done, she ends up moving into a house on her own with her mother, she ends up meeting a guy, and she ends up teaching herself how to drive, and then that all goes to pot when her husband shows up again. So it's all about a woman trying to gain her independence and trying to make the right choices for herself and her children. It did end up being quite good, but I don't think I'm going to follow any more of Anita's books just because it's not my kind of story. It was very simple, very short paragraphs. It was good and it did have me a bit hooked sometimes, but some of the other times I was a bit like, it's good, but it's just not my kind of good. So yeah, if you get what that means. Those are all the 10 books that I got through in July. It was a very, very, very good month with lots of very good books. But I'm going to stop now because I can see this is getting on to 20 minutes, which is quite long for me, so I'm going to shut up. What did you read in July? I hope you had a great month like I did. Just comment down below what you read and we can have a little chat. And I will see you later with a new video. Bye!